Hey everybody, this is Kevin Davidson, your host for Kevin's Corner, real estate from a marketing perspective, and this is episode number 23 of my podcast. I'm very excited. I've been going on for probably 5 months now, once every week, so another episode is going to be in the books in about 45 minutes. I always start off the podcast by thanking my support staff, which is Jennifer Smitis, the Area Vice President of Houston, and Caitlin Kornick, Devaney Devon, and Wendy Santana, the escrow officers for both Sugar Land and Richmond. And again, if you're an agent and you're watching this podcast and you need a good escrow officer, a good title company, obviously you need to be using Stewart Title. The other thing that I'd like to say is if you want to be a guest on the podcast, give me a call, 832-654-0527, or email me at kevin.davidson@stewart.com. With that being said, we're going to get started with this episode number 23. A lot of you guys might know this young lady sitting next to me. This is Cindy Pham. Say hi, Cindy.
Hi, everybody. Cindy Pham with Asset Preservation, and thank you for having me. Just happy to be here.
No, this won't be the first time you'll be on, I promise. I'll hit you up for next year. Cindy actually works for Stewart Title, correct? And she teaches a lot of her classes for me. She's involved in the office, and we get to see each other once every quarter. So tell everybody what you do.
Okay. So asset preservation actually is Stewart Title's qualified intermediary. So we are asset preservation. We started as a qualified intermediary in 1990, and then 1993, Stewart Title bought our company. So we're a wholly owned subsidiary of Stewart Title. So a 1031 exchange qualified intermediary, it is for it's an internal revenue code, section 1031. This tax code allows an investor to defer capital gain taxes when they sell an investment property and buy a different. So you're essentially trading an investment property from one property to another. And in order to do that, you have to use a qualified intermediary to facilitate that, to hold the funds in between selling the property and buying the next, and that's what we do.
Okay.
Correct.
So for people that may not understand a lot of what you just said, capital gains tax. What is that?
Correct. So basically, it's when your property appreciates just sitting there. So you have owned your investment property for a while, and then over time you've kept it as a rental. But when you sell it, you've got the gain on that. So let's say you bought the property years ago for $200,000, and now you're selling it for $500,000. So your gain is roughly about $300,000. So that's your profit. Okay, so now you're selling that, and so you're going to pay taxes on the capital gain taxes.
The $300,000.
Correct, taxes on the $300,000.
So why is it that when you do a 1031 exchange and you exchange one property for another, that you're able to defer that tax?
So the tax code started off back then when, in 1921. This tax code's been around for over 100 years, and it started off us trading properties. So you had your property, your farmland, I had my farmland. We swapped properties. There was no money involved. So the IRS came back and said, "Hey, Kevin, I want tax dollars." And you said, "Uncle Sam, IRS, we just swapped properties. There's no money involved, so therefore there's no tax dollars to give you." Now, eventually, as the tax code evolved, you said, "Hey, Uncle Sam, IRS, I want to sell my property to Cindy, but I actually don't want Cindy's property. I want to buy someone else's property. And that property is actually even costs more. I can do more. I can expand more. I can, do all that." And so the IRS said, "Okay, you can sell to Cindy and buy from someone else, as long as you don't touch the money." So back then when we swapped money, swapped properties, there was no money involved.
Right.
So essentially now you can sell to me and buy from another person. You can't touch the money in between as well.
So when you say you can't touch the money, where does the money go?
So the qualified intermediary is required to hold the funds. So that's where we step in. So as you're selling the property, before you close, we actually step in as your intermediary, and we basically intercept and we hold the funds in between you selling this property. And there's a whole process. So, we'll have an exchange agreement, and we work directly with Stewart Title or the closing company, we receive the proceeds. Then you'll have 45 days to identify what you're going to buy, and a total of 180 days to close on your replacement property.
180 days. That's, if my math is correct, 6 months. About.
There are months that are 30 days.
It's
31 days, so it's
right.
180 calendar days.
Okay. If you take up to the 45 days to identify the next property that you're going to purchase, is that 45 taken away from the 180?
The 45 days is inclusive of the 180 days.
Okay, so, all right. And then what happens if you don't meet either one of those two deadlines?
Well, eventually you get your money back and just pay your capital gain taxes. There's no penalties for not completing your 1031 exchange.
Okay.
So this is kind of like an opportunity for you not to pay your taxes. So I always like to tell people, why do you want to do a 1031 exchange, right? So this is non-recognition treatment. So basically, when you've got investment property, so it's technically like-kind exchange. This is also called a like-kind exchange. This is non-recognition treatment from the IRS. So when you have a property of a trader or a business or your investment property, this contributes to your economy, okay? Now, if you sell that property and you keep the money to yourself, so the IRS wants to tax you on your capital gains. But instead of keeping that money, you're going to reinvest into a different investment property that essentially recontributes to your economy. So of course, your realtor, your agents, your title company, your appraiser, your handyman, your make-ready contractors. It goes down to even like the Sherwin-Williams, the Home Depot. So it contributes to the economy. So the IRS doesn't recognize the gain, since you're not keeping that money, and that money is contributing to your to the economy. The IRS is not going to tax you. They're going to let you defer those taxes.
So it's kind of like when you're doing this, you're helping the economy. You're helping all kinds of other people.
Yeah. So you're contributing. Yeah. So at the end of the day, IRS uses tax codes to drive economy, to help our economy, and so this is, they use the tax laws as the vehicle to drive that, to steer it.
So how many 1031 exchange swaps can you do?
You swap until you drop.
She started to smile when she said that to us.
Because essentially you can do a 1031 exchange and sell property A and buy into property B. Okay. When you sell property B, you can 1031 exchange to property C and so on. Okay. And so the IRS, this is a tax deferral, not a tax exemption or tax relief. So if you 1031 exchange to property A to B, from B to C, and if you sell C, the IRS wants tax dollars for the capital gains for A, B, and C, right? And so now, if you pass away along the lines, your heirs inherit the property, or your taxes go away. So essentially, why do you want to do 1031 exchange? One, who wants to pay for taxes, right? Two, you have more buying power, because instead of, let's say we had the gain, we bought for 200, we sold for 500, your gain is, 300,000. Instead of paying taxes on that 300,000, that tax dollars rolls into the next property, right?
So instead of having 230,000 on the 300, you have the full 300,000 to use, because it's
the
not
full
taxed.
but you're trading a property of 500,000. So after you pay taxes from the sale of 500,000, so let's say you've got roughly around 520, 530 to, 420, 430 to reinvest. You've got a full 500 to reinvest for a full tax deferral. Okay. And then, so you've got more buying power. You don't want to pay taxes. You've got more buying power, and also it's an estate planning too. Because you keep on swapping until you drop, because once you pass away, all the taxes go away. Your heirs don't inherit the capital gains.
Oh wow! Okay.
When you pass away.
So what happens to them? The capital gains. If they inherit the property but not the taxes.
My analogy is that Uncle Sam's in love with you and he follows you from property to property, and once you pass away, he's so sad he goes away. He just
Really?
goes away. Yeah. So he's not in love with your children.
I did not know there was any way that Uncle Sam would go away.
That's why you swap until you drop.
You swap until you drop. Wow. Okay.
Uncle Sam's so sad. He goes away. He disappears, and the capital gains are gone.
That's interesting. And based on the terminology you've been using, because I was in property management for 7 years, so this is not a concept that's new to me. But until I met you, I never really understood it.
Mm-hmm.
But this is for real estate investors, right?
Correct.
I couldn't do this with my home that I live in.
No. So what does not qualify is the home that you live in. Mm-hmm. And by the way, the home that you live in, if you lived in it for more than 2 years, you have a homeowner's exemption on it already anyway, right?
What does that mean?
So if you own your home, that you've lived in your home for more than 2 years, and if you're married, you're exempt up to $500,000 of capital gain taxes, right? $250 if you're single. So you have a homeowner's exemption already if you own your home that you live in. Okay, so you cannot double dip the IRS.
Right. Wow, very interesting. And
you can't flip property, so it can't be the home that you're living in. Your intent has to be buy and hold as an investment property. You cannot. It doesn't qualify for your home. It doesn't qualify for your second home. It doesn't qualify for flip property, because when you're flipping property, your intent is to buy the property, fix it to sell. So your intent is to sell, not to hold for investment.
Right.
And also for builders, if you buy, build, and sell, that does not qualify either. It's got to be a buy and hold as an investment property.
You got to want to rent it out.
Yeah.
And then we were having a conversation just before we did the podcast with one of my realtor friends. The property has to be in the United States, right?
Correct. So it's a federal tax code. The property can be anywhere in the U.S.
And the property you're buying needs to be
anywhere in the U.S. So you cannot sell in Texas and buy in Cabo. That's a no-go there.
Man, that just blew my whole plan. Now I got to start over. Awesome. How long have you been doing this and working for Stewart Title?
Just over 5 years.
Wow. And have you been dealing with 1031 for your whole career, or what did you do before this?
I was a commercial retail broker.
Really?
Yeah. So I was a leasing broker for the investment sales team. So I've been in real estate since 2001.
Wow, 2001. What was I doing in 2001? That was
over 20-something years.
Yeah. Wow. Matter of fact, okay, 2001. I had just recently graduated from University of Houston. So I graduated from University of Houston in June of 2000. So I had just started my career.
Yeah.
And then you also you teach 1031 for me and for a lot of other Stewart Title offices. Tell everybody about that.
So I do teach CE. So the biggest mistake on a 1031 exchange is when clients call me and they've already closed on their investment property, and then it's too late to do a 1031 exchange. And so the first person they blame on is the realtors.
Of course. You should have known.
You should have known. Like, what, they expect your realtor to know everything, and if they knew that, they get really upset once they've closed and they realize how much taxes they're going to have to pay. And so I teach CE classes to realtors and brokers to educate them on the 1031 exchanges. So I'll do a 1 hour class, and I'll also do a 2 hour class. But I can also go on forever, like even 3 hours. There's a lot to it, because you've got your realtor, your single family. You've got your more complicated exchanges where the commercial ones kind of get into a lot too, and then you've got.
So you can do this with commercial property as well?
Absolutely, as long as it's investment property. So you can exchange from land to a rent house to a building, farmland. I mean, and you can also do multiple properties too. So you can sell one property and buy multiple. Like, let's say you have a piece of land, you can sell that and buy 3 or 4 rent houses. Right, wow. That works. And so once you've accumulated, 3 or 4 rent houses, you want to expand to multi-family or an apartment building, that's fine. So you're selling 3 or 4 properties to buy one. So you can definitely do that as well. We also do reverse exchanges and improvement exchanges too. So the reverse exchange is when you're buying the replacement property first, and then you're selling your relinquished property, and then the improvement exchange is where you're buying the land and then building the building. So those actually are a little bit more complicated exchanges. So we do them more on a
But
property.
it sounds like if you're a real estate investor, you have several options.
Yeah. So those type of exchanges are more complicated. It's going to be on property with a lot of gain or commercial property.
And your program, your message really resonates with real estate agents that work with real estate investors.
Correct.
So if you're a real estate agent out there, in my opinion, and you don't work with real estate investors, I really believe you should. My 7 years in property management, they're a different animal. You can't treat a real estate investor like you did or you do Mr. and Mrs. Cindy Pham buying their dream home. They just don't have the same wants and needs. And once you learn the difference, if you find a good real estate investor that's buying a property every 2 or 3 months, they can make your career if you do it right. But this is a good option to plug into if you're an agent for your business model.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell everybody how to get a hold of you? And at the same time, if a real estate agent approaches you and is curious about this, how would you handle that conversation? What would you tell them?
Well, I usually will qualify them as far as asking about the property. Is this an investment property? How long have they owned it? And then explain the process of the exchange, the timeline, and the process on how we get involved with the exchange agreement, and then working directly with the title company and what happens after, where you're getting, how you identify your replacement property, and what needs to happen.
So you're gonna, if you're a real estate agent, you can actually come to Cindy and ask her a question, and she'll give you all the answers.
All day long.
Everything
all
you need to
long.
know about this. So don't be scared of 1031.
I'm happy. I'll give you my cell phone number. Everybody is welcome to call me on my cell phone, text me, or email me. My cell phone number is 281-923-4269. That's 281-923-4269. I can be reached at cindy@apiexchange.com. So it's cindy@apiexchange.com. Apple Paul information and the word exchange.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you being on the podcast
Thank
today.
you so much.
This was I actually did a little bit of homework before you got here because I wanted to be able to at least try and talk about this professionally. So it's a very good topic. It's a very good, like I said, if you're an agent and you have heard about this or you don't know about this and you want to learn more, call Cindy. She's a great resource, and she's helped me and my agents ever since I started working for Stewart Title. So thank you.
And if everybody is free, come to one of my classes that Kevin has. I think generally people enjoy the classes. It's a capital gains tax class, but I promise you it's not that boring.
No, it's not boring. It's a numbers thing, and it's educational, but it's not boring. So plus you get credit for it, right?
Yeah.
CE credit.
Complimentary credit.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to have Mr. Jay Neal from the University of Houston Sugar Land and the Fort Bend Chamber of Commerce up next. Thanks, guys. Say bye.
Bye.